Hello and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the program that takes you around the world. I'm Teniola Shoboale. On the program this week, European Union members agreed to cut gas use in case Russia halts supplies. Plus, United Nations wants special attention placed on displaced women and children as Ukraine's First Lady hosts second edition of Summit of First Ladies and Gentlemen in Kyiv. European Union members agreed this week to cut gas use in case Russia halts supplies, but some countries will have exemptions to avoid rationing. EU members, locked in talks since the idea was suggested last week, have now agreed to voluntarily reduce 15% of gas use between August and March. The US said its aim from the deal is to make savings and store gas ahead of winter, warning that Russia is continuously using energy supplies as a weapon of war.
With a dozen EU countries already facing reduced Russian supplies, Brussels is urging member states to save gas and store it for winter for fear Russia will completely cut off flows in retaliation for Western sanctions over its war with Ukraine. Energy ministers approved a proposal for all EU countries to voluntarily cut gas use by 15% from August to March.
We are sending a strong signal, not only to Vladimir Putin, who once again failed to divide the European Union, but most importantly to our citizens. Today's decision ensures we will not have to face dramatic consequences in winter, including gas scarcity or the price spike.
The cuts could be made binding in a supply emergency, but countries agreed to exempt numerous countries and industries after some governments had resisted the EU's original proposal to impose a binding 15% cut on every country. Hungary was the only country that opposed the deal.
The most crucial outcome is that we will start saving gas now and that we have a blueprint to act together in a coordinated way if the situation worsens. Reducing gas demand proactively allows us to avoid rushed or unilateral decisions when it is too late.
There are fears within the EU that Russia will completely cut off flows in retaliation for Western sanctions over its war with Ukraine. Moscow provided 40% of EU gas before its invasion, which it calls a special military operation. Russia also supplies 70% of all Europe's thermal coal imports, which is used in power generation, but that supply has to be replaced from mid-August, when an EU ban on Russian coal imports comes into force. With a dozen EU countries already facing lower Russian supplies, Brussels is urging member states to save gas and store it for winter.
The United Nations is worried that the Russian invasion of Ukraine would lead to many women and girls being trafficked and exploited as they flee the fighting and want special attention on them in any peace or rebuilding efforts in the country. Speaking virtually at the second edition of the Summit of First Ladies and Gentlemen, organized by the First Lady of Ukraine, Elena Zelenska, the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed asked the international community to step up support in this regard. A number of other international personalities joined the event virtually from Europe, the United States, and elsewhere to show solidarity with the Ukrainian cause.
On the 150th day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the First Lady of Ukraine is hosting the second summit of First Ladies and Gentlemen in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, to draw the world's attention to the consequences of the war on children and women.
Strength and resilience for the possible.
Renowned British television talk show host Piers Morgan and Ukrainian TV news anchor Hannah Homonai are compares for the event.
Thank you for having me here. It's a great privilege. The First Lady of Ukraine, Elena Zelenska.
Holding across 5 cities in Europe and the United States of America, The hybrid event is the brainchild of the wife of the president of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, who is joined by at least 21 first ladies across the world, including the wife of U.S. President Jill Biden.
Honor the memory of all the Ukrainians, children and adults, military.
A moment of silence for victims of Russia's invasion of her country marks the start of her call to rally support for Ukraine.
Thank you. No matter the suffering, we will be able to do everything in order for the child's smiles and happiness and calm and tranquility to stay in our life. And we are inviting everyone, all those who support the victory over brutality, to join us.
America's First Lady, Jill Biden, who days ago had hosted Ms. Zelenska, added her voice to strengthen the international community's resolve to help women and children.
Through our humanitarian assistance, we are working to address the devastating physical and mental impact of this war. This includes increased access to primary and trauma medical care, food, clean water, and accessible shelter, as well as support to survivors of gender-based violence. The United States remains steadfast in our support for Ukraine.
The President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky.
Attending the summit in person, the President of Ukraine, in his usual defiant demeanor, insists that his country will not break.
The war will not make us hostages of those brutality actions committed by the occupying forces on the territory of our brave and peaceful country. Why are we talking about rebuilding now when we are still at war? We're doing so that on the very first day of the peace we would be able to feel it comprehensively, so that there would be a systemic rebuilding, reconstruction of everything that was destroyed by the Russian army.
5 panel sessions discussed various efforts to rebuild Ukraine as the United Nations makes a case for the care of women and girls.
When forced to flee, women face the risk of trafficking and sexual exploitation. It is crucial that the international community steps up to support Ukrainian women and girls and provides them with the protection that they need.
Former British footballer and UNICEF ambassador David Beckham is among the dignitaries that joined the event virtually. In an emotion-laden voice, the father of 4 sympathizes with children in Ukraine.
I cannot imagine what the Ukrainian people have gone through these past 5 months. But I do know, through my experiences with UNICEF, that getting back to routines through education and learning is a great healer for many children.
The summit also provided an opportunity to raise funds for humanitarian assistance now and in the immediate future for Ukraine. A total of $3.2 million was realized for the reanimation medical vehicles, which the First Lady hopes to use for the funding of at least 32 ambulances to be deployed to the most affected areas of Ukraine.
To other stories, firefighters in California deployed air tankers, bulldozers and hand crews to battle a fast-moving wildfire that suddenly grew into one of the largest fires of the year in the United States. More than 3,000 people were forced to evacuate, with many more under fire advisory.
A raging wildfire just west of California's Yosemite National Park, which according to officials is one of the largest fires of the year, forced thousands of residents to evacuate this week. The Oak Fire had expanded rapidly after it began on Friday last week, overwhelming the initial deployment of firefighters as extremely hot and dry weather fueled its galloping pace through dry forest and underbrush. By Sunday, the blaze had scorched more than 14,000 acres of land. The fire grew to 17,241 acres by Monday night about a 3% increase from Monday morning, more than half the size of San Francisco. It was 16% contained, up from 10% contained on Monday morning, and 3,700 people had been evacuated.
We had a really good day today. We got a lot of work done. This morning, we reported 10% containment on the fire. Tonight, we're reporting 16% containment. So, you know, it's not a huge number, but it's a pretty big percentage jump. If you look at it that way, we're making some really good progress on this fire. At this point, the fire does not appear to be an imminent threat to Yosemite. Sure, it's in the area, and sure, you know, at least one of the main roads into Yosemite is closed and inaccessible right now. But we don't believe that the fire is going to get into Yosemite. We believe we're going to be able to keep it out of there, and we don't think the conditions are such that that's going to be something that's going to come to fruition in the future. We think that we're going to be able to get control of this and stop it well short of getting to that area.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom proclaimed a state of emergency for Mariposa County earlier this week. Yosemite, about an hour's drive from Mariposa County, is home to some of the largest and oldest sequoia trees in the world. More than 2 decades of drought and rising temperatures have conspired to make California more vulnerable than ever to wildfires, with the 2 most devastating years on record coming in 2020 and 2021, when more than 6.8 million burned an area greater than the size of Rwanda.
Over in Europe, temperatures hit 40 degrees Celsius in parts of Greece this week as a heat wave that has hit other parts of Europe spread east. Firefighters struggle to contain several forest fires, with the summer heat making it much harder to bring the blazes under control.
The Parthenon Temple in Athens was covered in a haze as temperatures in Greece surpassed 40 degrees Celsius on Monday. People in the capital sought shelter under the shade of trees, at the beach, or at air-conditioned relief centers provided by the municipality as the heat wave in Europe spread east.
Now we are going home because I need to sleep. It's too hot.
I love the heat, but I want to go swimming. So I think we're going to go to the beach.
As part of renovations in the city to tackle extreme heat, the municipality is replacing cement and sidewalks with cold materials such as white marble, which absorbs less heat, keeping the capital cooler. Along with the white marble sidewalks, more fountains and trees are also being installed as part of an ongoing project to help bring down temperatures in a city that sizzles every year.
We are in the climate crisis. We are beyond that point that we were talking about climate change. The climate has changed, and now we have to deal with that. So we're going a posteriori, if I could say, to resolve this problem. So yes, it's a huge deal.
Municipal workers handed out bottles of water to the homeless in the city and encouraged them to find shelter in the relief centers. On Tuesday, a huge effort was underway to put out a blaze that persisted in the protected national park in northern Greece, with firefighters, military and volunteers pooling efforts to save a forest full of wildlife. Greece has been plagued by fires for several days due to intense winds and high temperatures that have burnt homes, forests and properties. Hundreds of people have fled their homes, with authorities calling this summer one of the toughest in the Mediterranean. Last year, wildfires ravaged about 121,000 hectares of forest and bushland across Greece during the country's worst heat wave in 30 years. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Europe, countries are still battling to put out wildfires amid sweltering temperatures. 5 European Union member states, France, Italy, Slovenia, Spain and Greece, have requested EU assistance to battle devastating blazes.
When Foreign Dispatches returns, Senegalese island turns the tide on coastal erosion. We'll tell you how in just a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Nigerians living in Eswatini have appealed for more Nigerian government support in the various processes to acquire relevant documents in the host country. This was part of the outcome of a closed-door town hall meeting between the heads of Nigeria's mission in South Africa with concurrent accreditation to Eswatini and the Nigerian community which hosted them. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, reports.
The special guests being welcomed by the Nigerian community in Eswatini were Nigeria's High Commissioner, Ambassador Mohammed Manta, and his wife, Madam Hawa, Nigeria's Consul General, Mr. Andrew Idi, Nigeria's Defense Advisor, Commodore Chikaji Isa, among other top officials from both missions in South Africa. Ambassador Manta encouraged the citizens to be individual ambassadors for Nigeria in their host country. Cameras were sent out during the town hall meeting proper, but issues touched on include citizen diplomacy, timely access to consular services, among other challenges Nigerian citizens face in the kingdom.
We have challenges in some areas like the permit. We have some areas like incorporating with the government because we don't have embassy. There are so many issues whereby the Nigerians will be facing because we don't have embassy here. It's actually affecting.
One of the biggest threats to our existence here is the normal notion about Nigerians and the image that people have about Nigerians outside.
The message for them is the government is here to support them, to attend to them when they're in distress, to provide for their consular needs, immigration needs as best as we can, and to enjoy them, to be law-abiding, to be patriotic citizens and ambassadors of Nigeria wherever they find themselves.
Earlier that day, Ambassador Manta presented his letter of credence to the Eswatini Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ms. Tuli Tladla, before proceeding to the Lozita Royal Palace, where he presented the same, along with goodwill messages from President Muhammadu Buhari.
We are looking forward that you will promote a lot of activities, a lot of Nigerians to come and see the opportunities which exist in the country. Likewise, we will also do the same, encourage Eswatini to see the opportunities in Nigeria and which are there. We want to give you an assurance that whilst you carry out the duties as the new High Commissioner for the country, you will be able to get enough support from the kingdom. And lastly, please convey my personal greetings to the President, wishing him continuous prosperity for all the people of Nigeria. I thank you.
Nigeria and the Kingdom of Eswatini have long-established ties, and both nations share a friendship which spans several areas, which include trade and development cooperation. Eswatini, which is one of the beneficiary countries of Nigeria's Technical Aid Corps program, is currently host to about 2,000 Nigerian citizens.
May I have your permission to...
And still in South Africa, the country plans to try and resolve its power shortage by making it easier for private companies and build plants and paying households and businesses to produce electricity from solar panels. Power utility Eskom has for the past decade resorted to load shedding to help sustain the power grid, but that has affected economic growth and job creation, with Eskom's debt at almost 400 billion rand and unable to meet demand from its fleet of aging and poorly maintained coal-fired plants. Channels Television's Brian Pageni has more on this.
During the past 3 weeks, severe load shedding has disrupted all of our lives.
President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation on the country's power challenges, which has affected businesses and households, and has seen power utility Eskom moving to stage 6 load shedding in recent weeks.
The set of additional actions I'm announcing, firstly, are aimed at improving the performance of Eskom's existing fleet of power stations. Secondly, These actions will accelerate the procurement of new generation capacity. Thirdly, these actions are intended to increase the private sector investment in generation capacity. Fourthly, these actions are designed to enable businesses as well as households to invest in rooftop solar installation. And finally, these actions are directed at fundamentally transforming the electricity sector and positioning it for future sustainability.
Eskom has been struggling for the past decade to supply reliable energy to the country, with issues ranging from maintenance on power plants, breakdowns, theft, fraud and sabotage, and this has hindered investor confidence and economic growth.
Over the next 3 months, Eskom will take additional actions to add new generation capacity to the grid on an urgent basis. As an immediate measure, surplus capacity will be bought from existing independent power producers. These are power plants which built more capacity than was required and can now supply this excess power to Eskom. As part of addressing the shortage of megawatts, Eskom will now also purchase additional energy from existing private generators such as mines, paper mills, shopping centers, and other private entities that have surplus power.
South Africans have been urged to continue to help government in using electricity sparingly to help with the power grid and to also resort to other possible sources, including solar, to help ease the burden of power outages.
And finally, on the program, on an island in southern Senegal, residents are fighting coastal erosion and reclaiming areas of beach. They're doing this with a scheme using wooden stakes and coconut tree fronds to accumulate sand. Take a look.
Simple wooden structures padded with coconut tree fronds are helping residents of Diogo Island in southern Senegal win back stretches of sandy beach from the Atlantic swells, eating away much of the West African coast. In early July, local primary school teacher Gilbert Bassene and the initiative's founder Patrick Chevalier used red string and a marked stick to measure how much sand had accumulated next to one of the structures and wove dry coconut branches through its stakes to help trap more sediment.
Seawater levels have been rising, taking over the beach. When I arrived here in 2016, just here you could see coconut trees all along the beach. You even had houses just here. The stands were here nearly 20 meters from the sea. But now the sea level is rising. Since the groiner system was set up next to the military camp in 2019 by Patrick and some of the island's youth, you can see they gained some ground because they accumulated sand.
Chevalier, a retired economics professor, has been volunteering in the area for the past decade. He says they've had good results so far and aim to gain even more ground.
On a stretch of beach measuring 1.5 kilometers, which we call the fishing dock, we are going to gain at least 30 meters on the entire fishing dock because this is the result we had in the 2 previous places we already worked on. So we think it will have the same effect here. When the beach moves forward and the sea recedes, we extend the structure, and I hope that by December, we'll be able to do a first extension to try to gain 50 meters.
West Africa has many of these low-lying deltas, making its coastal ecosystems among the most vulnerable to sea level rise, erosion, saltwater intrusion and flooding. UN's global panel of climate scientists warned in its latest report.
The ocean was so far away. From what I remember, the ocean was so far away that we used to hear it without seeing it. There used to be a forest and rice paddies. Today, we have much less rice paddies, and the water even invades our homes.
For Bassene, he believes local residents can help in slowing down the erosion, but commitment is needed.
Well, this is where we say goodbye till next time. But remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shibowale. Bye for now.